Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 31 of the Tomato Timer. And today I'm joined by a fellow UCL friend. Aliza studies population health at UCL. She's just finished. How did we finish our degrees? It's crazy. Aliza is the founder and executive chair of the Climate Action Society. And she was part of this was the first society that actually went to lobby with the UK Parliament as well. And she has won the Student Award for Sustainability and commitment to that for 3 years straight. And it's so cool to have you. Thank you so much for joining us, Aliza.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having
How
me.
are you?
I'm good, just trying to make the most out of the transition out of lockdown.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Yeah, same. And it's crazy. Like I was gonna say, we're at UCL together, and I just realized we're like UCL, like we finished with our uni. I got my email the other day about like the alumni survey. So I'm like, oh my gosh, how did
Yeah,
4 years pass?
it's really coming to an end. It's
It's
crazy.
ridiculous. It doesn't feel like it, and I feel like I might get an email saying that, oh, you have an exam left over. I'm like, gosh.
Probably. Or you missed an exam. I think that's unfair on
Yeah.
you.
So, Elisa, how did it all start? Because you've been the kind of like into this climate action stuff for the almost your whole university life, but where did the passion for sustainability kind of spark for you?
Sure. So I think there is no one step answer to that. It was in one specific event. Um, I think if I had to summarize how I got into sustainability and got involved with all the initiatives that I am involved with currently, I think number one, it was my experience during a charity relief drive back in 2015. I was in Karachi, and Karachi experienced the deadliest heat wave Pakistan had seen in over 50 years. And I learned how it was mostly due to climate change, the effects of climate change causing severe implications for the local population, from a shortage of water to the health effects to systemic poverty. That made me feel like I need to do something about this problem, or like more so push me to educate about the causes and the consequences of this issue. Then number two, having moved around a lot, the exposure gave me an insight into the potential in youth, in people of color, in women, in how everyone offers an important fresh perspective,
Yeah.
and that you can't solve a problem alone by excluding, especially the very people who experience the reality. The climate crisis, for example, is a crisis of capitalist system which not only oppresses women globally, but it places the burden to fix the crisis predominantly on women through its emphasis on consumer action. It is also disproportionately women of color who are the victims, yet their voices excluded the most from discourse around climate change. So, number three, it was, I think, a personal realization of my privilege, to be able to educate myself regarding the background of the problems around me, studying and analyzing case studies, being able to think of solutions, being able to discuss with my peers and my teachers, having access to libraries and the internet. And I felt that I had the privilege, and together with my hard work, it's brought me to a platform where I could do something about the problem I was observing, and in this case it was climate change.
Yeah.
And so my university, UCL, allowed me to affiliate CAS, the Climate Action Society, with the Students' Union, and ultimately I guess it was a combination of factors around me and my influences that led me to get involved with sustainability.
Amazing. And I feel like one of those kind of like the key points that I heard from you is the fact that kind of there's so much potential with everyone, right? We have different perspectives, we have different abilities to see the world and find solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we push too hard to kind of keep it kind of like within certain, I guess, strands. We want to like
Yeah,
classify stuff too deeply,
agree.
and again, oppression is such a challenge that we don't even hear the voices which matter the most.
Yeah.
Um, so you've come up with this kind of you have this passion building in, and you just mentioned the students' union. How does it form? How does like kind of how do you form societies at university, and like how did you then go about like the part about society is having a lot of people associated, and you
Yeah.
have to empower them, make them feel excited about it. How did that kind of all come together?
hmm so I think a lot of it has to do with, every time someone asks me this question, I think about the problems I entailed rather than just my motivation. And in terms of setting up and running CAST, the problem was not setting our objectives. It we knew what we stood for. We knew what our mission
Mm-hmm.
was. We had the UN Sustainable Development Goal 13 in mind to tackle climate change urgently through a non-monochrome approach. But the difficult bit was running it. So the first problem that I faced was the perception of climate change. It was viewed as a frenzy for people. It's for people who are obsessed with the environment. It's just for geography students. It's just for white people. It's a boring topic. It's not good for your resume. It's just for developed countries. Um, and to tackle these perceptions was a huge challenge because how do you cater to a systematic way that people think. And so when I set up CAS, the direct process was you go to the Students' Union, you fill out a form, and it's basically the pitch or the proposal that you submit to the union about what your society is going to stand for and what you're going to do. And what the union would like to see is a potential in being able to deliver the goals that you do have. Now at UCL, we have what over 180 different societies, from
Yeah, it's a
chocolate
whole
to
bunch.
chess to beekeeping. Um, and when I was forming Climate Action Society, I knew it's not for social purposes. It has an altruistic cause that will need very passionate people, very hardworking people to implement change. And so when I formed the proposal, unlike the standard procedure where where you give four ideas of the kind of events you're going to host, I submitted an 8-page long proposal about the objectives, the beliefs that we had, and how we're actually going to translate our ideas into action. And
Yeah.
I did everything. I specifically named people. I specifically named my events. I pre-planned way ahead, and I think that kind of gave me a clear trajectory to work with. And obviously, we changed a lot along with time, depending on how my team was recruited, what ideas we had, and how topics dealt with time. But I think having that level of detail rendered me a response from the Students' Union right away within that week. Usually, the Students' Union takes about a month or two to get back to you. And then what I did was I took it to the next level by sending a proposal to the provost at UCL. And I told him, I don't want cash to just be student society. UCL needs to divest from fossil fuels. UCL has this gap. We could do this stuff in terms of your sustainability unit, in terms of your carbon emissions. And you know what? We're here to help you. We're not against you. We're very much on the same team. We can diplomatically sit on a table. We can discuss ways that students could get involved in your sustainability policy and basically get the momentum going forward. And that brought me on to my second problem. Once I did get acceptance and affiliation with the Students' Union and the UCL Board of Directors, the second issue was no funding. As a new society, the Students' Union doesn't give you any funding. And so I had to set up a sponsorship division, and we approached so many companies. And of course, if your goal is climate action, there's only a limited number of companies that you could approach that work 100% sustainably or 100% ethical. But in the process, we try to use it to our advantage by approaching controversial companies and corporates, whether it's Bank of England or BP. And we said, okay, we didn't just take their money, and we said we made it more of a mutual agreement whereby we helped them achieve climate oriented goals. We didn't get much success with BP. It was quite hard to push them, but Bank of England, made it more of a mutual agreement. And we introduced sustainability workshops and helping them cutting down carbon use. We helped the digital presence in the sustainability arena in exchange of the sponsorship package they were giving us. And in this way, not only was our goal sustainability, but we were operating in a very sustainable way. And then the third problem was non inclusiveness. Historically and predominantly, climate change has been led by old white men. Um, and, to kind of step in that arena as a foreigner, as a student, with no qualifications, zero knowledge of climate science, everyone, did question my presence and Cass's presence and about the potential we had. But I sat at the diversity division at Cass. And so I was branching out the different segments of Cass as we, faced different problems or we realized different ideas. And that helped me kind of target our audiences for different events. We had BME focused events for the ethnic minorities, for people of color. We had over 150 course representatives to penetrate the 42,000 student body at UCL. And even this isn't enough. We still need to recruit more. We need to ensure that we are penetrating the PhD student cohort, the master's cohort, the undergrad cohort across all departments as well. And
Yeah.
I think one of our successes as well as our problems was trying to curtail non-inclusiveness and then getting those course representatives out there. And at one point, we had a group chat with like 200 members, and we needed that because we wanted to get our message across. And we managed
Yeah.
that. I think that's what helped CAS build a presence on campus like no other society.
One of the things that struck me was that you went and picked up the phone or sent an email to the
Yeah.
provost. Like, you, how do you get that? Like, that's an initiative that, like, many, not and forget about students or undergraduates or
Yeah.
postgraduates. I feel like professors and like faculty leaders will be freaked out to like do something like that. How does that happen? And where did that kind of the energy and the motivation to just like, what, if this is what's going to happen, then I have to do it at every level.
Yeah.
How did that, and it's obvious that you're, by pushing for that so strongly, you were able to then make your voice heard,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. Um, Definitely. Like I think one question was, am I gonna get a response? Is something gonna happen? To what extent could I fight against the bureaucracy and the levels, the hierarchy that exist to get my message across? And the good thing, I think I was lucky in the sense that I had been really on good terms with my department, with all the professors I knew, and I was doing a couple of research projects, a lot of volunteering projects,
Mm-hmm.
with different professors across the department. So I kind of had that network or that word of mouth, through which I didn't know some members in the provost office. I was dealing with the vice provost of education regarding some of the modules that I wanted to introduce or the research
Yeah.
that I was doing. I was interviewing people, and that kind of gave me an idea of how UCL works and how the provost would like to speak to someone. Fossil Free UCL, for example, has been on campus for over 7 years, and it's some people comment on it as a very passive aggressive approach, and UCL still did not divest. And I realized maybe it is time to sit diplomatically on a table. And granted, a lot of the time chancellors and people of power and influence get away with all talk, with no real change, and it's a lot of greenwashing. But
Mm-hmm.
I think in my proposal and my email, when I summarized, at first I made sure the email was quite brief and he could read it, and I summarized, the problem that it's a problem for UCL, and that you're going to get a lot of backlash by the news, by the media, by your students if you don't begin to make that change happen. And
Mm-hmm.
I am not your enemy. We're here to help you attain those goals in a very um, non-monochrome manner. It doesn't need to be just your faculty or your accounting team or your sustainability unit doing this. This is a problem that deals with carbon emissions, with urban redevelopment, with the health effects of climate change. So really, you had to get all departments of UCL involved. And I think when he saw that, okay, this is an organization or a student society that I could work with and get some dialogue across, and is on the same team and won't probably threat me or like lock me in my room, which has happened in like climate change
Yeah.
protests at UCL. I got on a table with him, and I guess he could see that there is potential to work with.
And it's all about empowering everyone in the process. I know that obviously, like someone like a provost might have the greatest power to, or seems like, or the people at the top, but you went and you said that not only do we need, yes, of course we need some leadership, we
Mm-hmm.
need this, we need that, but we also need everyone's
Mm-hmm.
voices heard. And that leads me to the next question, which was about, because I in your bio you talk about being one of the first societies that were then invited
Yeah.
to the parliament, the UK parliament, to lobby for climate change and then declare
Mm-hmm.
climate emergency, the first country to do so, for the first parliament to do so. How did that feel? And what is that? Would you call that the defining moment for the society, or was there anything else that is most memorable for you?
Um, I think we've had lots of defining moments, and I always tell people,
Mm.
like if you quantify our success, we had 7,200 members in 6 months across the UK. We had representatives in 3 out of the 4 countries in the UK. We were working with 6 London-based unis to revitalize their sustainability strategy. Um, but these numbers didn't really hit home in this kind of success that we had until we read the feedback forms that we got. And these feedback forms and or maybe the letters of recognition that I received, whether it was from the UK Parliament or from the House of Lords, they spoke about how CAS was a space for a movement um, that centers the voices and experiences of people of color and women. It ensures that our movements and our campaigns are centered around the notions of racial justice, of gender justice, that we must ally ourselves with campaigns fighting patriarchy, um, colonialism, racism, and economic injustice. So we must use the climate crisis as an opportunity to radically restructure society to one that is geared towards liberation. And we cannot do this without tapping into human capital, be it the female population, be it the ethnic groups, be it students, whoever it is, they possess an important perspective, they possess important knowledge, and deserve as much opportunity as anyone else. So when I read this in the feedback forms that we received, and we saw our numbers increasing, and when the parliament said, okay, we have taken the decision to declare climate emergency as a result of your work in the diversity and inclusion arena as well. And that was for us, I think, probably one of the first milestones that we reached. And yes, it is one of the many defining moments, but it didn't feel real until we saw feedback forms from people.
Yeah. And so with the society, I think you've done a whole bunch of stuff. You had a lot of members. You're always empowering the voices, especially of those which didn't have the power, or don't generally in the kind of the social context be given the kind of the authority or the platform to speak at. And you've done a whole bunch of stuff, but you there were like quite a few events that you would put on during the year, and there were things like workshops. I know the big thing, kind of the main event for you guys would be the
Yeah,
symposium, but there was a sustainability fashion show, and that there's a whole kind of new, it's not new, but it's getting a
yeah.
bit old, but this sustainable fashion, what is that about, and how does Climate Action Society and you personally kind of look at it and think about it?
Sure. So I think the Sustainable Fashion Show was very different from the other events that we were hosting. And the other events that we did host were very educational based. They were hands-on workshops. And one of the things that I want to ensure in my approach at CAS was making it accessible and attractive to Generation Z. Generation Z is quite busy filling in hundreds of internship applications and job applications. We've got so much going on for us. How do I attract my generation to a topic that is otherwise perceived as a far-reaching global goal, just for geography students, and something that they can't do much about? So I wanted to make CAS fun. I wanted to make it a very social event. I wanted to make it look cool. And the Sustainable Fashion Show was one way of doing that. We collaborated with the Fashion Society at UCL. And the idea behind this was trying to shift mindsets for sustainable consumption. In a consumer society, it is important to challenge traditional narratives to spark shifts in thinking. And as it stands, humans are consuming more than twice the resources the earth can sustain. So there is no question of our need to
Gosh.
change our practices. The question begged
Yeah.
is how. So every member of our audience is a consumer, and thus he or she should be aware of their power and consider how their choices accumulate to have real impact. It is questionable whether or not we can justify blaming consumers as individuals for the planet's perils, but there's certainly a need to shift mindsets. And so the question behind this sustainable fashion show, this fun activity that had never been done at UCL before, was how can we encourage industries such as food and clothing and tech to facilitate this transition? And by having the sustainable fashion show run entirely by students, showcasing student designers. 100% ethical and sustainable material, environmental friendly material was one of a kind incentive, and was followed by an after party, which was quite fun. People loved that, and we actually had the greatest turnover in our audience memberships. Following that event, about a 40% turnover, and I realized if you make something fun and accessible, interactive to all, they will come and hear you out. And we got the chance to do this sustainable fashion show, which was easily one of the most successful and one of the most fun events we've had.
Accessible and available. Like it makes so much sense to find the things that we are most excited about, and we have the opportunity to change, right? So we can talk about lobbying for parliament, and we can talk about new policies being enacted, or how the whole borough of where we live can change the way of how they're dealing with carbon emissions. But at the end of the day, we have so much power, and to realize the fact that the way we go out and shop and where we shop and
Yeah,
what we wear is crazy. Because when we talk about, and exactly what you said, it's too far reaching for us to kind of consider it so many
yeah,
times. Like we think that climate action and the climate emergency is for governments and old white people to kind of talk about,
yeah,
and kind of decide how it's going to be fixed. But once you make it available to us, once you make it um, that we have the power to make those changes, it's incredible. And I can definitely see why you had a huge turnover on those events.
yeah. No, it was a very thrilling journey to say the least.
And so I want to kind of like, obviously the Climate Action Society has been a huge part of your life and your university, past 3 years of it.
Mm-hmm.
But why did you end up going into, because you chose to study population health, and that's not a very
Mm-hmm.
common degree, I would say. Where did that stem from?
Yeah, it's very random. A lot of people, when they meet me, they expect me to be studying climate change or geography, but I'm not. And the truth is, I started off with um, not exactly a passion for climate change, but was a passion for doing something in life about the problems that my society or the environment that I was in tackled.
Hmm.
And so I think in my far-reaching goal of pushing for positive social impact, population health was a very rare choice. I initially got into UCL for medicine, but I ended up switching to population health, much
Oh.
to my dad's horror. But I think it was the best decision I've ever made because firstly, I don't have the patience to like sit through 6 years of medical school, take all my exams, and become a doctor because I didn't see myself practicing as a doctor. I saw myself as someone who was tackling diverse problems, meeting a lot of people, having a very hands-on approach in management or in policy. And so my degree, population health, um, it was a brand new course, and it was the first time it was being offered at an undergraduate level when I enrolled in
Hmm.
2017. Um, and it basically helped me comprehend the many attributes of public health, the social and physical environment, the way you live, the healthcare systems, and our genes. And I realized it is very much medicine, except that it's administrative. So I do modules on coding, on data science, on molecular biology, on the social determinants of health, and infectious disease. So it's one of the most diverse degrees at UCL, and it's very intimate with just 12 people. And that meant a lot
Wow.
of contact hours and one-on-one
Yeah.
interaction with my professors and my faculty members. I could be associated with every department in UCL. I could get involved in any kind of dissertation project that I wanted, whether it was heavily quantitative or qualitative, whether I wanted to go into my labs, whether I wanted to work with someone at WHO or the Public Health of England. And when I saw the potential that this course had, and the first time it was being offered at undergrad level, I thought, this is probably my best chance at utilizing my exposure, combining it with my interests, and learning the things that I do love. And so when I enrolled this program, initially I was a bit skeptical of how it would be, of what kind of job I could get, because I mean, no one had graduated yet.
Yeah, you're a little bit of a guinea pig, right? That is the
Yeah,
first time it's ever happening, and you're 11 other people. Just that's it.
exactly. So it was quite daunting, So like, okay, what are the real world practicalities of this course?
Hmm.
And to be honest, they're endless. I could go into absolutely any field that I want to. And I guess it was the idea of, again, moving around and having observed a lot of different disparities in health between different income groups, the middle income group, the income group, the low income group, and how the health outcomes differed. And the reason the health outcomes differed, again, were due to a variety of reasons. It could be from inheritance to your social and physical environment, and that was gauged in my degree.
And so population health, climate action, and now you're involved with kind of environmental consulting with the startup sphere as well. You're quite involved and know how that all happens as well. Um, it must be like incredible to like go back and ask you when you were like 15 or 16-year old when you were thinking about all this stuff that would it end up like this. um but I want to like this moment now that you're at with all the experience that you had. um what would you say were the things that got you here?
Hmm.
And what are the I don't want to use that same question again of defining moments, but what were those kind of like, those milestones, those things that like shape who you are at this moment right now?
Yeah. Um, so again, there's no hard and fast answer to this, but I think my direct answer is like 90% of it is my parents, who I'm so grateful for. They have an
Mm.
incredible examples themselves in their own arenas. And my mom's a doctor, my dad's an architect, and they have gone beyond their profession in serving society and the environment, and they have been my moral support system since the very beginning, and they have been there in a sense that they've pushed me to take up challenges, to think in a way that makes me realize my privilege, that makes me realize that I could still be a better person. um, they've put me into the best education institutions. They send me to the best institution in this country, I would say, in terms of population health. And I get to do whatever I want to do because they realize that, okay, I have different interests, and I would like to experiment and explore them. And that again, links back to my journey as well. I've interned at every kind of entity you could think of, whether it's a corporate or whether it's an NGO, or whether
Yeah.
it's a WHO. And the reason for that is not because, oh, I want to get everything on my resume. It's more so because I didn't know who I was. I still don't know who I am, and I'm trying to figure that out by knocking on doors. Um, so I think if if I was speaking to 15-year-old Aliza, I would tell her, like, it will be okay. It's a journey that everyone figures out. As long as you knock on the doors that are around you, as long as you push yourself out of your comfort zone, as cliche as that sounds, with a moral support system that will be by your side. Because I think without that backing, whether it's from your friends or from your family or from your partner, you do struggle to have that work and social life balance, or that work and personal life balance. And if there's a problem in that, then obviously you struggle to come to work or about with the same energy and drive as you could. So I think my parents easily are the number one reason. But at the same time, again, it's my privilege. It's the education institutions, it's my incredible teachers, and it's the different experiences that I've gone through, whether it is internships or volunteering.
Amazing. And it's so incredible to hear your humility after everything that you've achieved, to then give it back to the people who really do matter. And
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Our parents are our champions.
yeah.
They are doing everything for us. Um, and that is also the moment it's hit the timer. And so it's been so good to have you. I love to end with that. Thank you so much for joining us,
Thank you
Elisa.
so much for having me. It was a pleasure. Take care, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.